Welcome to the Olive Grove podcast. Today, we're doing a deep dive into, well, a really intense passage, Ezekiel chapter 9.
It's definitely striking. Very vivid imagery.
Yeah, and our source material is an analysis that really tries to unpack all that imagery, especially around divine judgment.
Right. So our mission today, essentially, is to walk through Ezekiel 9, understand this vision of judgment, and explore this idea of being marked, or, as the source puts it, covered by blood.
Okay, so let's set the scene. Ezekiel hears God, and it's loud.
It is. The text says God cries out loudly. It's a command, summoning these figures called commanders of the city.
Commanders with weapons.
Exactly. Each one has a weapon of destruction. The source paints the picture. 6 men coming from the upper gate, the north gate, all armed.
But there's a seventh figure who's different.
Yeah, crucial difference. He's dressed in linen, and instead of a weapon, he's got a scribe's writing kit at his waist.
And the source identifies these figures pretty clearly.
6 are angels, basically executioners. The 7th is also an angel, but his job is different. He's got the pen, the inkhorn, for marking.
And this isn't happening in a vacuum. The source links it right back to the previous chapter, Ezekiel 8.
Absolutely. Chapter 8 laid out all the terrible things happening, the idolatry, even in the temple. This vision in chapter 9 is presented as the direct result, the consequence.
So the indictment happened, and now judgment.
Judgment is coming. The stage is set.
Okay, but before the striking begins, there's this significant movement. God's presence, the glory of God, it moves.
It does. From above the cherub, that's the mercy seat, it moves to the threshold of the temple, the entrance.
What's the significance there? Why move?
The source really emphasizes this. It's symbolic. It's like a visual reminder that God's mercy, while it's infinite in, ability, is not infinite in time for a specific situation.
Oh, okay.
Moving from the mercy seat to the doorway suggests that window of grace for this judgment is closing. Judgment isn't just looming anymore. It's right at the door, ready to start.
So God's at the threshold. And then he speaks to the man in linen, the one with the writing kit.
Right before the others get their orders. His task is specific. Go through Jerusalem, the whole city.
And do what?
And put a mark on the foreheads of the people who are genuinely grieving, sighing and crying over all the disgusting things being done there.
A mark. Do we know what kind of mark?
The source says it was the letter Ta. In the old script, it looked like an X.
And an X.
Yeah. And the writing kit implies, actual ink, physical mark.
And the source connects this mark to something bigger.
It does. It interprets this Ta mark as a picture, a foreshadowing of the blood of Jesus Christ.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, and it even draws a parallel to Revelation 7, where God's servants get sealed on their foreheads before those final judgments hit.
So the mark identifies the faithful, the grieving remnant.
Exactly. It distinguishes them. But the source suggests it's deeper. It's about a covering, a protection linked symbolically to Christ's blood applied before the judgment starts.
Okay, so the marking happens first, then God talks to the other 6.
Then he turns to the 6 executioners. And the command is, well, it's brutal. Go through the city after the man with the mark and just strike.
How severe are we talking?
The instructions are explicit. Don't spare, have no pity, kill everyone without the mark. Old men, young women, little children, other women, slaughter them all.
Everyone.
Everyone not marked. But then there's that crucial exception, repeated for emphasis. But don't go near anyone with the mark.
So the mark is literally life or death here.
It's the dividing line. The source really hammers this home. The mark is salvation in this context. It represents, in a typological way, Jesus covering his people with his blood. That covering is what protects them.
And where does this judgment actually start?
Shockingly, God says, begin at my sanctuary. Start with the leaders, the elders, right there in front of the temple.
Start at the temple, and then what?
The next command is just as jarring. Defile the house. Fill the courtyards with corpses. Get going.
Wait, God tells them to defile his own temple.
Yeah, it sounds contradictory, doesn't it? But the source addresses this. The answer is yes. He does tell them.
But why?
Because, as chapter 8 showed, it was already defiled by all the idolatry. Spiritually, it was compromised. And remember, God's glory was already moving out, heading to the threshold.
I see.
So the physical defilement with bodies is almost like a consequence reflecting the spiritual state. God's presence was leaving anyway.
Okay, that makes a grim kind of sense. How does Ezekiel react to seeing all this unfold?
He's devastated.
Yeah.
The source says he's left alone amid the killing, and he just falls on his face, cries out to God.
What does he say?
He basically pleads, "Oh, Adonai Elohim, are you going to destroy everyone left in Israel when you pour out your fury like this on Jerusalem?" He's anguished, seeing the remnant potentially wiped out.
And how does God respond to that plea?
God's response is firm. He justifies the severity. He lists the reasons. The wickedness of Israel and Judah is exceedingly great.
Exceedingly great.
Yeah. The land is full of blood, violence, injustice. The city is full of perverted justice.
And God points to their attitude.
Critically, yes. He says they think Adonai has left the land, Adonai doesn't see. They figured God wasn't watching or didn't care anymore.
Which gave them license in their minds.
Exactly. So God's decision is unwavering. My eye will not spare, and I will have no pity. He's bringing the consequences of their actions right back onto their own heads.
So the source interprets this. They rejected God's covering.
Right. They turned their backs. So the alternative, the consequence, was to be covered in their own blood. Judgment.
A really stark contrast. Covered by the mark, representing Christ's blood, or covered by your own.
That's the core contrast the source highlights.
How does the vision end?
It concludes quite simply. The man in linen, the one with the writing kit, he returns.
And his report.
Just, I have done everything you ordered me to do. Mission complete.
And the takeaway from that final verse, according to the source.
It reinforces a key point. God holds back judgment until his people, those designated, are seals or marked. But once that marking is done, the judgment, at least in this specific instance, becomes unstoppable.
So let's try to synthesize this. We have this incredibly intense vision, this stark division, marked for preservation, unmarked for judgment.
Exactly. And it all circles back to that central theme the source raises. Everyone will be covered by blood. The question is, whose blood?
The blood represented by the mark, offering salvation, or your own blood in judgment.
That's the choice presented in the imagery.
And even though this is an ancient vision about Jerusalem, the source suggests it speaks beyond that time.
It presents this powerful message about, the consequences when a society or individuals reject God's standards. And this idea of a mark, a seal, a covering that distinguishes during judgment.
That resonates. You see echoes of that kind of idea elsewhere.
You do. It taps into deep questions about accountability, mercy, judgment, destiny. Now, the source material we're drawing this analysis from, it comes from Enduring Freedom Ministries. And the source notes you can actually read about how that ministry began. It also mentions its connection with Heartland Media LLC, which participates in the Amazon affiliate program, just providing that context for where the analysis originates.
Okay, good to know the background of the source perspective.
Yeah, it grounds the interpretation a bit.
Definitely gives us a lot to think about here.
For sure.
So as we wrap up this dive into Ezekiel 9, maybe something for you, the listener, to consider is that idea we talked about. Judgment being held back until the sealing is done.
Right. What might that imply about divine timing? About the opportunities that exist before judgment, both in Ezekiel's time and maybe more broadly.
And really sit with that core imagery the source emphasizes being covered by blood. What does that stark choice presented in the vision mean to you personally?
It's definitely a profound image to reflect on.
Well, thank you for joining us for this deep dive on the Olive Grove podcast. We really appreciate you spending this time exploring Ezekiel 9 with us.